Today, me and Tuck are going to share with you 5 mistakes you can't afford to make when growing seedlings and transplanting into the garden. Let's go! Here is a mistake that can easily be prevented: weak, leggy seedlings. Young plants grow tall and spindly like this instead of strong and stout like this for 2 main reasons. First is a lack of light. When first popping out of the ground, young seedlings need an intense amount of light. They actually need more light when they're young compared to when they get a bit more established, like these plants here. If you don't provide them with enough light, they'll go searching for it themselves and get taller, looking for the light and trying to get closer to the light. To prevent this, when my seeds are first sprouting, or even before they sprout, I will drop a grow light down close to them. This way when they sprout, they won't have to go looking for the light. I'll keep this grow light on for 16 hours a day. You don't have to use a grow light. You can start your seeds in a greenhouse or a south-facing window in the spring. Just know that if you get a few cloudy days, this could encourage the seedlings to get a little leggy and search for light. Not just a lack of light will cause leggy plants, but also if your temperatures are just too warm. If seedlings are in an area that's too hot for them, they spread out and get weak. It's almost like they're trying to leave where they are, or they're trying to stretch out to create more surface area so they can transpire more and cool themselves off. Tomato seeds like the soil temperature to be between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. But once they sprout, you want to drop the air temperature down to about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. This will give you short, strong, stout plants. Temperatures over 75 degrees Fahrenheit tend to produce weak, spindly plants. The ideal temperatures for most seedlings is between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. To keep me in this range, what I do is I have a heater kick on when the temperatures hit 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll have an air conditioner kick on in my greenhouse when the temperatures hit 70 degrees Fahrenheit. This helps me produce beautiful, healthy, strong plants. Another way to keep your seedlings strong is to introduce them to a light breeze when they are young. I like to use an oscillating fan. It just lightly blows on the seedlings. You don't want intense wind blowing at them, but a light breeze can make a big difference. The thing is, you can't really fix leggy plants when they start weak. Only some vining crops, like tomatoes, you could plant deeper and they'll root from the stem, which means you're better off preventing leggy plants rather than trying to manage them. Have you ever had plants like peppers or tomatoes that started to flower when they're young? When I first started gardening, I thought that was a good thing, but it's actually a bad thing and is a sign of your plants being stressed, usually because they're root bound. When you leave a plant in a container for too long, the roots start to twist together at the bottom, and that stresses out the plant. The goal of plants is to produce offspring, and if they're too stressed out and think that they might be dying, what they'll do is they'll quickly flower, try to produce seed, and then create that offspring. What this does is it switches the plant from the growth stage over to the production stage, and that is not what we want. To avoid this, we need the pot to fit the size of the plant. A good indication is when your plants start to shoot roots out of the bottom of your container, that's a sign it's a good time to transplant. Have you ever had beautiful plants growing inside or in a greenhouse? Then you transplant them into the garden and they look terrible. They lose their good color, they lose their healthy growth. This is frustrating, especially for new gardeners, but it's probably because you didn't properly harden them off. This is the process of slowly acclimating your plants to the outdoor conditions before actually transplanting them out. Think about it from your own perspective if you were a plant. One day you're living inside or in a greenhouse, ideal temperatures, high humidity, just a little bit of wind, and then one morning you wake up, it's cold outside, it's windy, and the sun is super intense. That would just be too drastic of a transition to happen over one day. To reduce this stress when transplanting out, what you need to do is slowly get your plants used to their new home before you actually move them in. So the first day, bring your plants out to a shady protected area for like an hour, then bring them inside. Throughout that whole next week, slowly bring them out, introducing them to more light and more time outside until they can spend a whole 24 hours outside. Then they will be hardened off and ready to transplant into the garden. Me and Tuck want to mention, now is the perfect time to grab a seed starting bundle so your seedlings can look like this. Also, it's a perfect time to grab a raised bed so you can take your garden to the next level. Check them out at teamgrow.us. Another mistake I see gardeners make, even after they've properly hardened off their plants, is they transplant out at the wrong time. The best time to transplant into the garden is on a cloudy, overcast day, ideally if it's drizzling a little bit, or in the evening to avoid the intense sun. I suggest looking into the future a little bit at the weather and making sure there aren't any days where it's very windy or the temperature is going to drop down a bunch before you transplant them out. Gardeners, myself included, are notorious for pushing the limits and trying to transplant things out earlier than they should be. If you want to try to do that, just be prepared. Something as simple as a clear gallon jug with the hole cut at the bottom could act like a mini greenhouse to protect your plants on a cold night. I also use my garden covers to protect my plants from the frost and keep my young transplants warm and safe. You can avoid this mistake altogether by being patient and planting out a little late. It's always better to plant out a couple weeks too late rather than too early. If you plant things out too early, then the ground hasn't heated up, the temperatures aren't ideal, and the plants will just grow slowly. What I suggest you do is put in your journal when you transplant out. Then after a few years, you'll be able to know the exact time where you could put things into the ground where they will thrive, but you're still getting them in as early as you can. It's true that even too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, and giving your plants too much water is a common mistake I see gardeners make all the time. Whether it's planting seeds or growing young seedlings, we want our soil to be damp, like this, not soggy, like this. We know that the roots of plants need water, but they also need oxygen. Soggy, oversaturated soil will lack oxygen. And if the roots of our plants can't get the oxygen, they'll die off and the plants will suffer. Damp soil, like you have right here, has enough water in it where the plants can access that water, but it also will have enough airspace where the plant's roots can breathe and get oxygen. That is why something as simple as drainage holes at the bottom of your cups is super important. You don't want your plant's roots sitting in soggy, oversaturated soil that could possibly go anaerobic. Let me show you how I like to water my young plants. So these plants here are adequately watered already, but let me show you what I would do if they needed water. So what I'll do is I like to fill the bottom of my tray with water first. The reason I'll do this is because if we just water the plants from the top and there's no tray or anything, then we could water the plants like this. The water could kind of go through and then the water would just kind of stay in the surface of the soil and the bottom wouldn't be able to get that much water. So if that happens, that could kind of encourage the roots to stay just at the surface. We want the roots to stretch down deep and go looking for that water and expand in the soil. So first, I'll water the bottom of the tray like I did there. Then I'll go by and just water the top of the plant. Like that. It's already saturated, so it's kind of drinking up a lot. Then I will leave it like this to sit for a few hours. After a few hours, I'll come out and I'll dump the tray of all the water, and then I'll put the plants back. When I dump the tray, this allows any excess moisture in the pot to drain out because we have the holes at the bottom. As it starts to drain out, some pockets of oxygen will open up and the roots can breathe. Then I'll come by every couple days and feel the weight of the pot. As the pot starts to get lighter, I'll water it again. You have to think about watering kind of like taking a drink. It's like you got to give your plants a drink, you got to allow them to drink up a lot of that moisture, and then once they get a breather, then you could come back and they're much lighter and there's a lot of airspace but not a lot of saturation, come back and water them again. So this is my preferred way to water, and you'll notice why I have trays underneath all my plants here. This allows me to water and the plants to kind of soak up some of that excess moisture. Then I could just dump the tray out and the plants can breathe, and you can see we're getting fantastic results by growing like this. So avoiding a few mistakes can make a massive difference for your seedlings, and these are going to be like the plants that are going to create all of our harvests in the garden. So having a strong start to seedlings is what will lead to healthy plants and massive productive harvests. And I mean, you got to have a good start if you want to have a good finish. Tuck's over here hanging out, having a blast. This guy's been working hard, protecting the garden. He never quits. Spam some hearts down low if you love seeing Tuck in the videos. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something out of it. And we hope you take some of these mistakes that we share with you and you avoid them. It's always better to avoid them rather than having to manage them or stuff. It's not fun managing problems in the garden. And you have to have healthy starts, like I mentioned, to have a healthy finish, to be able to get those big harvests. And we're so excited that the weather's getting nicer. I can wear short sleeves out here. Soon the transplants will be going into the garden and we'll get a step closer to that harvest. We wanted to thank one of our new channel members, Sherry Overton. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for having your hand in everything we're doing out here. We had an absolute blast out here. Tuck has just been, you know, kicking it, doing his regular thing. He's working pretty hard, even though he doesn't look like it is. He's just watching and surveying, and if anything tries to sneak into the garden, this guy's gonna be right on it. We had a blast though. Thanks for coming out with us. Tuck and James will be back at you again real soon. We out.